A very warm welcome to this live Action for Happiness event. My name's Mark Williamson, and it's lovely to be joined by so many of you from all around the world for another gathering of this amazing community of people taking action to create a happier and kinder world together. And I'm really looking forward to welcoming back today a very popular speaker who we've had before, Dr. Nerina. Nerina, it's lovely to have you with us again. Oh, I'm afraid you're muted, Nerina. We can't hear you. Sorry.
Last time, but it's lovely to be here. Delighted to be back. Thank you all. Thank you.
So, for those of you who have been to an Action for Happiness event before, thank you for coming back. Thank you for being part of this amazing community of people. We don't just care about our own well-being; we care about creating a better world and contributing to the happiness of others as well. And for any of you, anyone who's here for the first time, thank you, and please do take a moment to check in with the other things that Action for Happiness offers, not just these live events, but a whole host of online and local community activities. And as ever, you'll feel some of that community in the chat together during this event. So please, folks, do keep the chat relevant and supportive and kind as always. And there'll also be a chance to ask Nerina questions on this all important topic we're talking about today of sleep. And I'm really excited that we're going to be exploring, I think, a slightly different angle on this topic of sleep to one that I often hear talked about. I think we all know that sleep's great for our well-being and happiness, but Nerina's going to be talking to us about safety and that feeling of inner safety and how that can be supportive of our sleep. So let's get underway. Really, I'd love, Nerina. Maybe you're obviously an expert in this topic of sleep. Maybe you could remind us a little bit about your background, both professionally and personally, and maybe particularly why this topic is so of interest to you.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Well, I'm called a sleep expert. I never set out to be a sleep expert, but maybe there was a sort of driving subconscious force behind it, which came from my own problems with sleep. From childhood, from a baby, I couldn't sleep. And it was studying sleep for my PhD, and then leaving the world of academia, heading into the city of London and working in a corporate healthcare environment, corporate health screening. And that was back in the 90s. I know I'm showing my age now, but sleep didn't have that center stage that it seems to have now. Globally, the sleep industry is worth billions of pounds, billions of dollars. It's a huge industry. But back then, it wasn't really. But I started to notice that sleep was starting to become a problem. The world was speeding up, technology had landed on the scene, and more people would come through to my clinic. And there I was with my white lab coat on as a physiologist measuring their health and noticing that even the most tight-lipped of corporate employees would open up if I asked them, how do you sleep? And and they would say, I'm really having difficulty getting to sleep, staying asleep. And in fact, that gave birth to the idea to write my first book, Tired But Wired, because so many people said they were tired but wired. But it was back then, Mark, that I noticed that sleep was working its way up in the agenda.
I'm intrigued to sort of recreate a little bit of what you picked up in some of those corporate workshops, maybe now with this lovely community. Maybe we could ask people just to share in a couple of words how they slept last night. I know you do this a lot, Nerina, but maybe if you would like to, folks, just let us know how your sleep has been recently or describe how you feel about sleep so we can get a bit of perspective. So I'll read a few of these out as they appear. Terrible, lightly, poorly, not enough, great, less than 4 hours, really good, slept through, my usual 4 a.m. wake up, easily on and off, patchy, frustrating, good, really bad, lousy as usual, no sleep, I was working, disturbed, feeling rested, terrible. Wow, I mean, I'm amazed at the real spectrum of experiences, even in just this recent nights, I guess. Is this quite common, Marina, that we see a real mix like this?
It is. It's really common to see this sort of mix. I don't know. I can't do the statistical analysis on what's coming through in the chat box, and I don't want to get too distracted by it. But I have a feeling that there's more poor sleep going on than
Yeah.
good sleep. That seems to be the balance. I also wonder. Look, I have a PhD in neuroscience, so I don't want to get too esoteric, but we have just had a full moon, and the moon can really disrupt your sleep because you know it increases the REM component of your sleep. You might dream more. That can affect some people as well. But I just suspect a lot of this comes down to the state of our world, this feeling of safety, not feeling safe, the fact that, particularly since the pandemic, so many people we're dealing with uncertainty, we're dealing with fear and anxiety, and this hits us when we get into bed at night.
I think you're right that the current environment and recent events must play a role. But I wonder, is it true to say there were different types of sleepers? Some people find it easier than others. What are we like generally as a species?
I mean, there's complex ways of classifying your type, or so they call them sleep chronotypes. I keep it really simple. And at one end of the scale, I'll put the martini sleeper, showing my age again. The martini, the cocktail of the 70s, where the strap line was the cocktail you could drink anytime, any place, anywhere. So you have your martini sleeper at one end of the scale, and the other end of the scale, you have your sensitive sleeper. Your sensitive sleeper, for them, safety is a particularly key. And I'm wondering whether a lot of what's coming into the chat box and the Q&A is coming from your sensitive sleeper who particularly need to pay attention to their environment. They can't sleep on an argument. Sights, sounds, smells. Their nervous system can become more dysregulated, more out of balance. Um, and sensitive sleepers, as I was once one, can become more martini like. We can learn how to become better sleepers by learning the tools and techniques that I share. But martini sleepers, as a result of life events, can become more sensitive. And during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people became more sensitive as sleepers because of the stress and the feelings of lack of safety in the world.
Well, I'm looking forward to coming on to this topic of safety, where I think
Mm.
you've got some really distinctive and insightful things to share. But I also love it when we can use the wisdom in our community. So I'm sure people here listening, joining in, already do things that support their sleep, whether they're a sleep anywhere person or a sensitive sleeper. So maybe just we could ask the community again, what are some things you find are really supportive of sleeping well? If you'd like to share a couple of words in the chat, what helps you sleep well. Maybe we can see what wisdom we already have here before you add to it, Nerina. So again, I'll read a few out. Meditation, total darkness, exercise, blocking out light, white noise, a bath before bed, counting things, earplugs, breathing, reading, limited technology, cannabis, lavender, silence, yoga, eye mask, listening to Radio 4, melatonin, a walk, a spray, a weighted blanket, tea, an SAD lamp in the morning, rain sounds. I love this. There's so much practical experience here. Again, what are you seeing? Are these some themes that you're used to seeing, Nerina?
I'm glad to see magnesium in there as well. If anyone's struggling with their sleep and restlessness at night, I really recommend taking magnesium supplements. We've even got people talking about their cat and EFT, all sorts of frequencies. So you've got a really sophisticated, well-informed audience here. And you can see why the sleep industry is worth billions of pounds and billions of dollars. I mean, we've come, Mark, such a long way since the hunter-gatherer lying on a mat of leaves, haven't we? We've come such a long sleep industry, and yet still people are not sleeping well. So what we're talking about here are the choices that they're making. Largely, by and large, they're talking about the things they're doing in their external environment. Some people are also talking about the things that they're taking, which will change their internal physiology. In the lavender spray, the magnesium salts, the using sad lamps, and things like that. The things that will affect their physiology. But what I would, when we start talking about safety, what I'm encouraging people to think about is how they're feeling inside their body. Now, all of those external things are definitely going to help, especially things like limiting blue light and things like that. But also becoming more aware of what's happening inside you, really, really important. And that's where we start talking about safety.
Hmm. Well, before we go into that safety point in more detail, I just wanted to note something I've felt in conversations about sleep, which I find quite refreshing in your work, which is I think we see a lot of sleep experts telling us how crucially important it is to sleep well for our health. You know, it supports all these wonderful things, and a lack of sleep is so terrible. And I find that creates almost a sense of like additional pressure to sleep, and it feels like there's a few things that are slightly almost unhelpful myths, like we have to sleep at a certain time or a certain
Yeah,
amount, or
yeah,
that
yeah.
that there's this danger that bad sleep becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wondered if you could, if there's any myth busting you wanted to do around some of the basics
Yes.
before we dive
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that because look, it's really important, and maybe I can. I know we've got an international audience and people are in different time zones, but many of us will be trying to get some sleep after this. This whole thing of putting all this pressure on sleep, and sleep is really important. There's a reason why nature has designed us to spend a third of our lives sleeping. It's important. It repairs the body physically, mentally, emotionally. I believe spiritually. When we sleep well, we feel happy. All of those things, but as hunter gatherers, if we had evolved with this inflexible need to get 8 hours of sleep in order to cope the next day, we would probably be extinct as a species. So, there we can get by. We are far more resilient than we think. And I think, you and I have chatted about this session. I was telling you about my own personal story about my personal sleep disruptions at the moment because my teenager is working late shifts. And then when she comes home, the dog's barking and it's really messing up my sleep a bit. I'm putting a lot of emphasis now on my daily habits and the other things that will energize me: my food, my movement, natural daylight, hydration, making sure I'm taking my supplements, making sure I'm getting exercise, making sure I'm hugging enough, making sure I'm talking to people and laughing enough and doing the things with gratitude practice and meditation. So, sleep is only one, a very important way of getting it, energizing yourself, but not the only thing. So, take the pressure off your sleep. If you're not sleeping well, don't measure your sleep. Don't fixate on the data from your wearable. Don't get hung up on checking the time. Please stop checking the time during the night. I don't think anyone said they've stopped checking the time, but that's a game changer. It is normal to wake between 2 and 4 a.m. It is actually normal to wake between 10 to 15 times a night. But when we tell ourselves, we look at the wearable data, we go, oh, I woke 7 times last night. Well, it doesn't say well done that you work 7 times because it's normal. It is actually normal. So stop worrying about it and go more by your lived experience. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Okay, you wake up and you're feeling less than 10 out of 10. You're feeling less than 5 out of 10. Then make some clever choices that will give you energy. Move well, drink well, hug well, live well. Don't just rely on sleep.
I love that because it takes the pressure off, and I find that when you do that, you sleep better anyway. I remember
Yeah.
an insight that someone once told me was if you're in bed and you can't sleep, even just lying in bed and being calm and breathing is still good for your body. So enjoy that.
Yes.
And I find that when I switch into that mode,
Yeah.
I'm more likely to
Yeah.
fall asleep. So it's
Absolutely. And there is such a thing as well, I've been talking about the importance of rest, and with a lot of my clients, I get them to take the pressure off the sleep, and I actually ban them from using the word sleep. And I'm going to say, you're going to really rest well tonight. When I was working with Premiership footballers, I'd say tonight, don't even think about sleeping. You're going to think about resting. So think about resting when you wake up during the night. You know, come to a lovely little safety-inducing exercise. Can I do that? Do you
please,
mind if I
yeah,
do that now?
yeah.
You wake up during the night, your mind is racing. You're thinking, oh, goodness, but I'm not going to check the time because that crazy sleep expert said don't check the time. You want to go to the bathroom? To the bathroom. Don't fret about it. Come back to bed. One hand over your heart, one on your belly. Notice your breathing and just say to yourself, I'm just going to lie here and I'm going to allow myself to rest. And follow your breathing. For following your breathing in and out, you might even want to silently repeat those words to yourself. In as you breathe in, out as you breathe out, silently. And you can even play with gently prolonging the out. So you're doing a kind of and sending that out breath down into the belly. And just saying, I'm gonna rest. I'm gonna focus on resting. I'm enjoying resting. It's so lovely to be able to rest. It's self-hypnosis, if you like, trying to fool your brain rather than going, why can't I sleep? What time is it? How many hours before I need to get up? But just put that focus on rest. And during the day, build rest into your day. Professor Andrew Huberman calls it non-sleep, non-deep sleep rest. NDSR or something like non-deep sleep rest, especially at some point between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. So I lay on the floor for 10 minutes this afternoon with my dog beside me, hand on belly, hand on over heart, just breathing for 10 minutes. It's so rejuvenating.
Wonderful. Let's talk about safety
Mm.
And your book, Finding Inner Safety, of course, is partly about this topic of sleep, but it's something broader and deeper than that. Um,
Yeah.
so I'd love to hear a little bit about the different ways our bodies respond to threats, because I guess what we're talking about here is how we deal with whether or not we feel safe or indeed the opposite, which is unsafe. And I get the
Mm.
sense that quite a lot of things in the modern world are making us feel increasingly unsafe. So how would you like to introduce this topic of safety and
Yeah.
how we're dealing with it or not right now?
Yeah. I think start by saying, that with our very first breath, we embark on this lifelong journey of trying to find safety within ourselves, within our environment, within our relationships. From your very first breath, you're on a quest to find safety. And the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which controls all the functions in the body, is designed along the premise of, am I safe or am I not safe? So if you perceive that you're not safe, you will go into the sympathetic nervous system. Very helpfully, your nervous system switches into sympathetic nervous system, adrenaline, cortisol, noradrenaline, fight or flight, to enable you to fight the threat. So that's a helpful response of the nervous system. If we think we're under threat and we're not safe, you go into the sympathetic nervous system. Now, the problem with that in relation to sleep is that if you're constantly feeling as if you're under threat, which a lot of people do, it switches off the other part of the nervous system, which is involved in in helping you to feel safe. It's the parasympathetic. It's about thriving, rest and digest, recuperation, immune function, digestion, sexual function. And if you're constantly feeling unsafe, you start, how do I put it, living in the wrong part of your nervous system. Now, the thing about living in the wrong part of the nervous system is not only can you not sleep, you also start to become more run down, more exhausted. It starts to wear you down. Not only does it affect you, but it affects the people around you. Because I know you talked in previous sessions, for example, with Dan Goleman, you talked about the emotional contagion. We all know what it feels like to be around someone who's edgy, anxious, nervous, fearful, worried. There's a safety contagion. So when we feel safe, people feel safe around us. When we feel safe as a leader, our teams, our employees feel safe. Our children in a family, if the parent feels safe, their children stand a better chance of feeling safe. So, Stephen Porges, Dr. Stephen Porges is the sort of grandfather of safety neuroscience. And he says, if you want to improve the world, start by making people feel safe. But actually, you have to start by making yourself feel safe, regardless of what's happening in the world. That's what this is about, inner safety, because our external world is never going to be safe, really. We've got to find it in ourselves.
I find this so helpful and thought provoking, and it when you mention it, it suddenly seems so obvious that what we all really want is that feeling of
Mm.
safety. And as you say, it's been wired into us throughout our lives. Let me just make sure I understood you. So we have this autonomic nervous system that's got these two modes, and when it's in the sympathetic state, we're kind of aroused and we're ready for action and we're fight or flight. And if we're in the parasympathetic state, we're more able to, I guess, rest, digest, be calm, and so on. And I imagine one of the points here is that we're spending quite a lot of time in that unsafe state, or at least aroused state, because of the way we're living. That might be the environment we're in, which is partly in our control but partly out of our control. But it's perhaps also the way that we're approaching our lives and the way we're thinking, and whether or not we're allowing ourselves to feel safe. Is that right?
Yeah, and the choices that we're making. From if you think about the way you sleep tonight, is all of these things that people have, beautiful things that people have thrown into the chat box, all the choices that they're making, and all of the sleep hacks, which is wonderful. But you're actually preparing yourself for how you're going to sleep tonight. From the minute you wake up in the morning, all of the choices you make in those, 1,440 minutes, every choice you make is taking you closer to feeling safe or unsafe. It's going to take you closer to good sleep or not good sleep. So, yeah, the choices we're making. So, if you think about before you go to bed, are you choosing to be in your inbox? Are you on social media? Are you watching the news? What are you reading before you go to bed? What are you watching on television? What kind of conversations have you had throughout the course of the day? What are you putting into your body that makes you feel safe or unsafe? You could be biochemically, nutritionally creating feelings of unsafety in the body, drinking 15 cups of coffee a day, skipping breakfast, not eating the right foods. That's going to biochemically send the nervous system into a state of what we call dysregulation, which means that you go to bed carrying that with you. You're in the wrong part of the nervous system and you won't sleep so well. So it is about what we're allowing ourselves to do, what choices we're making throughout the day.
So I was intrigued to hear, Nerina, that there is this sort of safety science, and you've already mentioned
Mm.
some of the sort of science behind this. But what I'm picking up from what you've just described is that there were some external things, but also, as you were saying, there's some stuff we can do inside ourselves. And maybe I wondered if we could go through each of those a little bit more in turn. But I think you also have rather more fancy sciencey words for both of those things. Do you want to say a bit more about? Am I right that neuroception is one of the words? What does that mean?
There's that lovely word where, you know, for example, if you've listened to my classifications of what sort of sleeper you are and think, I think I'm a sensitive sleeper, actually. So think about yourself. If you're a sensitive human being, are you that person who walks into a room and you can feel the vibe in that room? You know, you go to a party or a dinner party or you walk into a meeting and you go, oh, goodness, there's not a good feeling in this room. So neuroception is our ability to scan our external environment and sense, yeah, feel the energy in the environment around us, the external environment. So that's neuroception. Sights. So for your sensitive sleepers, or if you're a martini who's going through a sensitive phase, sights, sounds, smells. Really important. Think about your bedroom. How does it look? Does it look like my teenager's bedroom, which is a tip? Or does it look like my bedroom, which looks like a sanctuary, smells like a sanctuary, feels like a sanctuary? Because for me, a sensitive sleeper, it's really, really important. And smells and sights and noises. So I have a fan in my bedroom to block out external noises and badgers and foxes and my dog, but all that sort of thing. Neuroception, scanning the external environment. Am I safe? Let's get more interesting about this now. Let's move safety in inner safety, interoception. Having an awareness of your bodily feelings and sensations and responses to what's happening out there in the world. So before I came on this webinar, I became aware interoceptively, I think I can use that word, that I was feeling a little bit anxious. I was thinking, am I using the right Zoom link? Am I here too early? Am I here too late? Have I got something wrong? Um, and I noticed that inside my nervous system was nervous. So what did I do? I made a really simple choice. I took my slippers off. I put my feet on the ground. I felt my feet on the ground. I sent my breathing down into my belly. I imagined roots growing out through my feet. And I just settled my nervous system. It took me seconds. It took me seconds to do that. So by the time we connected, my nervous system was in a state of regulation. The little nap for 10 minutes that I had this afternoon, that also helped to settle my nervous system, which will carry through to this. So I hope that explains the difference between that external. There are always going to be things happening in our external world. But what we do have some element of choice over is how we respond internally within.
So I'm going to again try and make sure I've understood this. So neuroception is about how we might perceive the environment around us and whether we feel safe in a space, and there are some external choices we can and can't control there. And then
Yeah.
interoception is more about how we feel inside ourselves, which to some extent at least we can influence. And so I guess what comes up for me is how, because you've mentioned a few examples already, but I know you've got some practical techniques for developing more inner safety, some of which people will find in the book, which we'll send a link to in the follow-up tomorrow. And I know you have
Thank you.
some online resources on your website and so on, so we'll send the links to
Yeah,
that as well. But
thank
what
you.
would be fantastic in this Action for Happiness event would be to try out an action together. So you had I can't remember the name now, but you've got a lovely name for one of your exercises that we could try together now. What was that? Remind me.
So the havening technique was created by a psychiatrist, neuroscientist. He developed this technique to work with war vets who were suffering from PTSD, and it's a technique that's based on neuroscience that immediately I'll do a simple version of it. It can help to bring safety into your body, and you can do it during the day if you're feeling agitated or unsafe. Um, if the internet connection hadn't come back, I'd have been doing it like crazy right now. You can do it if you get into bed and you suddenly think, do you know what? I'm still thinking about that conversation I had with my teenager, or with my manager, or if you wake in the early hours and you can't get back to sleep, very, very common. So what you do is simply just putting hands on opposite arms like that, and you can either rub up and down the arms or you tap, either of the two. And it's really simple. You just use words like, so imagine you're saying it out loud, or if you want to say it silently to yourself as I say it, things like, I am safe. I am safe in my body. I am safe in my skin. I am safe to rest. I am safe in my body. I am safe. It is safe to sleep. Safe to let go. It's safe to rest. It really is as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. And you can do that silently in bed at night, or you can do it out loud. And it's incredibly soothing. And you can do that before meetings. Obviously, you don't want to say it's safe to sleep. That might be a little bit career limiting. But, just saying I'm safe in my body, it's safe to use my voice, anything like that. Just bringing you, and it brings you back into the body, because what happens when we start to feel unsafe, inner feeling of unsafety, is we start to leave the body, or dissociate, if you like, and we become numb. We leave. And what this does is it's a somatic exercise that brings you back into your body again. So you return, you come back in again. And using your breathing as well. So I was pausing, I was slowing down, I was breathing. And it is a surrender. So I can't help noticing this wonderful word, surrendering to sleep. It really is. And surrendering to life, because you can use it in all sorts of life situations.
Mm. Thank you. I found that really practical, and I can understand why the words are sort of reminder of the fact that
Yeah.
you're safe here right now. I mean, you might still be upset about what happened yesterday and worried about what's happening tomorrow, but right here, right now, in this room, in this bed, in this space,
Mm.
I'm safe. And I think that kind of sense of spatial and temporal safety is really powerful. But what's going on with the crossed arms and the tapping, though? Is that to do with EMDR, or is there something physiological
Yes,
going on there as well?
it's very related, right? Self-soothing. It's like giving yourself a hug.
Hmm.
So it's almost like self-parenting, but also using alternate sides, hands on the opposite arms. You're engaging both right brain and left brain, the emotional brain and the logical brain as well. So, it looks simple, but actually there's a complex neuroscience behind it, but it's so powerful. You don't need to think about the neuroscience behind it. It's just, it works beautifully.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
noticing that, and I'm grateful to Renata, who's just said something in the chat. But the observation was that made me cry, and I don't know why. And I wonder
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something about giving ourselves permission to reconnect with
Mm,
ourselves, and to
mm,
recognise, and to sort of talk slightly more tenderly to ourselves. I think so often we have a rather harsh inner voice, and
absolutely.
what you just took us
Absolutely.
through was a much more. It's almost like the
Mm.
nurturing that we all want from others, we're giving to ourselves in a way. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I recommend doing this first thing in the morning as well. So this is a really powerful way to start your day. Is, rather than waking up in the morning and the first thing you do is reach for your phone. I mean, personally, I'm just as addicted as everyone else. So my phone tends to be switched off and charging in another area of the house, because otherwise I would reach for my phone first thing. So what you do when you wake up in the morning is, almost before you've opened your eyes, you might want to do a bit of self-soothing. You could do it in the same way I showed before, with one hand over the heart, one on the belly, on the lower abdomen, below the belly button. It's called in Qigong the Dantian. I think some of your listeners are familiar with the Dantian, with Qigong. So you put it one hand on the heart, one on the belly, and you can use things. You can even just rub and just say, I'm safe in my body. But if you do the havening first thing in the morning as well, and you that might bring up tears. It might bring up tears, because we're so used to starting our day, just as you said, Mark, in this very punishing way. I've got to do this and I've got to do this, and it's action for happiness, and I better not let them down, and I better be perfect. And a lot of this is related to our childhood conditioning. It's not the Nerina who's the adult. It was the Nerina who is a work in progress when it comes to perfectionism. I write about this in Finding Inner Safety, because when I was at school, we had to say a little poem every morning: good, better, best, never let us rest till we make our good better and our better best. I mean, it's horrendous. It was about making everything perfect. And I'm constantly working on my inner Miss Trunchbull, and that which is particularly there first thing in the morning. So start your day with kindness, with gentleness, because the act of sleep is about kindness and gentleness. It is about surrender. It is about softening and letting go. So if you can do that regularly throughout the day, it's incredibly powerful.
Mm. And what's going on with that mantra that you said again was sort of almost haunts you is, of course, good intentions, like let's do the best we can, let's be good
Yeah,
people. But of course,
yeah.
if it becomes a sort of self-flagellation, it has kind of an almost a toxic effect. So the way I like to think of it is like, do the best you can during the day, and whatever you can do is enough. And then at the end, say that was
Mm,
enough. Let's let it go and move on.
yeah,
And so for
yeah.
me, what I find really helpful, and I know you talk about this in your work a lot as well, is at the end of the day, just stopping to bring my attention to things that have gone well, however big or
Beautiful.
small. I had a
Yep.
lovely conversation with my daughter. Although I
Mm,
didn't get all my to-do list done, I did achieve these things, and I managed to get outdoors. And even though it was raining, I still saw the trees, and whatever it might be, just those little moments of that was good and that was enough. And so there's something about gratitude that isn't just great for our mental health. It feels like gratitude almost gives us more permission to let go and to sleep. Is that your experience as
mm.
well?
Absolutely, it absolutely does, and I would really recommend to everyone that you soak in those moments of gratitude as well. So you don't just, I love the idea of gratitude journaling. I love writing journals. What are the wonderful things that I'm grateful for in my day? But give it time to settle in. As the neuroscientist Dr. Rick Hansen said, I think you might have had him on as a guest as
Yes, that's
well.
right. Yeah.
The brain is like Velcro when it comes to negative experience, but it's like Teflon when it comes to positive experiences. So we really, when we have these moments, these glimmers and glimpses, again, they're called glimmers and glimpses in safety neuroscience. When we have these glimmers and glimpses of gratitude or joy or kindness or compassion, soak into it, sit with it for 30 to 40 seconds. Just think about that moment when your teenager said, Mum, are you okay? Can I make you a cup of tea? If the tech doesn't work, Mum, just call me. I'll come down and sort it out for you. That's what my daughter said to me. Attitudes. And I'm going to think about that tonight. It makes me want to cry now. So teenagers can be such pains in the neck. But, when you think about it, don't just say, tick the box, she did this. Soak in it, feel it. How does it make me feel? It brings up emotion. That emotion puts me into the ventral vagus, the parasympathetic nervous system, where you want to be, where I want to be in order to be able to sleep tonight. You know, so it's not just a quick, I'm grateful for this, and this. Soak in it, feel it.
Mm.
Mm,
In a moment, Narina, I'd love to come to some of the questions that people are asking. So if you would
yeah.
like to ask Narina a question, please use the separate Q&A option in Zoom. And if you see a question you like, please give it a thumbs up and that will raise up the list and we'll look at the most popular questions first. But a challenging one for me, I think, Narina, which is some of us aren't able to control the environment around us and are dealing with really difficult situations. We know in our community there were
Mm,
people dealing with either major health concerns themselves or worries about the health of loved ones, financial worries, some serious physical and mental challenges, and um, so there may be quite a lot of reasons why we're not feeling safe in the world around us. Do you
mm,
believe that even in a home that's full of arguments, for example, or a time when you're unemployed and worried about even making ends meet, that you're still able to create a sense of inner safety, even if it's just for that period of recovery at night time? Because it would seem to me like it's still a
mm,
vitally important thing for us to
mm.
do.
Yeah,
Have you got
yeah.
any tips on how to feel safe even in difficult times?
Yeah, oh, such a fantastic question. And again, I'm linking back to the work of your conversation with Dan Goleman and perhaps Rick Hanson as well. You might have talked about this, and Dan Goleman referenced the work. the what's the book? Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for
Mm.
Meaning. I remember years ago, decades ago, reading that book and just thinking, wow, this man, even in a in a concentration Nazi concentration camp, and he's lost members of his family, he's able to access within himself um, feelings of safety through optimism, through realistic optimism, through gratitude. He's able to find that these are all submodalities of this whole thing. You know, when you feel grateful, when you feel optimistic, when you feel compassionate, when you feel kind, these are all submodalities of feeling safe. My life is extremely messy. I'm sandwiched between issues with teenager, a very elderly parent who's extremely ill, as well as a changing physiology and all of this sort of thing going on as well. Um, but I work deeply on feeling safe, and there are times when I don't. But you have to keep doing the work, and sometimes doing the work is that thing of sit down and cry. I am not in a place where I can write a gratitude journal right in this moment. I need to feel what needs to be felt right now in this moment. So crying is allow yourself to feel what needs to be felt. Don't rush to move to I'm very grateful for my wonderful life. I am, but you also need to go in and feel what needs to be felt. And if that is hard for you, then find the support. Find a therapeutic space. It might be a loving friend. It might be journaling. It might be your pet. My dog is amazing. My cat is amazing. There are times when I'm stroking the dog and I'm having a cry. You know, I don't have to pay for that. It's just there. And then when I've done that little piece of work, then I may be in a position where I can move to gratitude. Um, but it's all part of the work. And I'd also say, I'd love to say something about some quick wins if I can, Mark.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. We need resources to do the healing because accessing inner safety might involve not just touching things that are there on a surface level. It might be I've had to do a lot of work on epigenetic trauma, on ancestral trauma, the stuff that came through my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors who were slaves. You know, so there's a lot of research, there's a lot of science behind this. To do that work, it takes a huge amount of resources, i.e., energy. We need energy to heal. So I'd like to just give you 5 quick wins here, and this will help with your sleep as well. And it's covered on one of the resources on my website as well. So, but let me just say it quickly, very quickly. Make sure you're eating breakfast in the morning within half an hour of getting up. Don't use caffeine as a substitute for food. Make sure you're drinking at least 6 glasses of water a day. Hydrate your physiology. Try to get to bed earlier a few nights a week. That's my 5th non-negotiable. In bed around 9:30, 10, reading a book, journaling, meditating, but not on your phone. Number 5, please cultivate a healthy relationship with this. Okay, these 5 things, after 14 to 21 days of doing this, the nervous system will start to reset. You will find you have more energy. You may find you then have more energy to go in and do the deeper work. And I have many clients who say, I've done those 5 things, kicking and screaming. Now I'm ready to work on the relationship with my husband. Now I'm ready to go back and do that and that childhood work on the perfectionism. You know, now I'm ready to go deeper. But make sure you're doing
Mm.
some of those basics before you start going deeper because you need energy to do it.
That's really, really helpful. It's like get the sleep hygiene right, and then you're in a better
Yeah.
place to sort of cultivate a deeper sense of safety. And I really think that word safety is so important because I don't think we often think of it. And yet, as soon as you say it, it makes complete sense. If we think of our main objective is just to create the conditions and the thoughts and the practices that help us feel at peace with
Absolutely.
ourselves and at peace with the
Yeah.
world. It's so vital.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned this earlier on, but I just wanted to come back to it finally before we come to questions. You talked about the contagious nature of this feeling of
Mm,
safety, and I
mm,
I sense that, I mean, you mentioned aging parents and younger generations, but I think particularly younger generations, there's quite a lot of people not feeling very safe right now as they look to the
absolutely.
future. So
Absolutely.
whether we're parents or whether we're colleagues in a
Mm,
work environment or leaders in other ways, I
mhm.
think that when we get this right, we're probably better able to help others around us feel safe too. Is that true?
Absolutely. Totally 100%.
Mm.
It's as simple as the putting your oxygen mask on. And, when I work with leaders, often, I used to be involved in a leadership program at Ashridge Building Business School. And I was at the front end of that program. It was a 5-day program. Day one, they would have, Dr. Nerina doing how do we resource people so that they feel that sense of safety and they've got the right kind of energy. Because leaders can be running on fear energy. A lot of leaders in today's world
Mm.
are running on high energy, but it's manic, it's fearful, it's threatening, it's bullying, it's bullish. And what you want is the energy of kindness and compassion and empathy and care. But you have to work on that in yourself before you can exude it. And it's the same with the home and being a parent. And I'm a parent, and there are times when I just think, I just don't know what to do in this situation. And then I have to remind myself, keep your feet on the ground, keep steady, put your oxygen mask on, keep finding that safety within yourself, resource yourself, Nerina. If I've eaten well, drunk well, slept well, moved well, breathed well, hugged well, my daughter feels it. She feels it. And so I'm constantly saying to parents, whether it's out on dog walks or whether doing sessions in schools or with teachers, I'm constantly saying to parents and leaders, hold space in yourself, hold steadiness in yourself if you want to exude it to the people around you, and particularly the young people whose nervous systems are very vulnerable. They haven't fully myelinated the nerve fibers, they haven't completely developed the frontal lobe, they're still running in the reptilian brain, they feel unsafe, and they've got all that social media going that makes it so you have to hold steady for them. Mm.
Nerina, Denise asks, do you have any advice for waking up in the early hours of the racing mind and not
Yeah,
being able to get back to sleep? She says she's
yeah.
tried breathing exercises. What
Mm.
else can we do?
Oh yeah, there's again there's something like this on my website, is that I love yourself to sleep exercise where you focus on your foot. It's a sort of a body scan, progressive muscle relaxation exercise. But there's also share a ridiculous exercise, a really silly one, which really gets you out of the head and into the body. I didn't know if I would do this today, but I'm so tempted. We've got time, haven't we, for me
Please,
to do this?
I'm
Yeah.
intrigued.
Okay. It does mean I need to stand up, right? But so I don't want you to. Oh, okay. Let's just get this camera in the right place. So I'm standing up here, got limited space. I've got bare feet on the ground. My feet are about hip width apart. If anyone wants to try this, go for it. Okay. And what I'm going to do, so my head is racing. You might take yourself off if you're sharing your bedroom with someone, go off to the bathroom or something so you don't wake up your partner. And you stand there, feet about hip width apart. Plant your feet. Be aware that your brain is racing. Let it race. Those intrusive thoughts are not you. They're just your brain going mad and it wants a bit of distraction. And what you do is, if your balance isn't great or you have any medical problems, hold on to something. Make sure you've got support around you. But otherwise, come up onto the heels and drop down. We come up again, drop down. These are called heel drops. Now, I'm going to actually close my eyes and do it. And my knees are slightly bent. My shoulders are relaxed. I'm like a rag doll on top. Now I'm going to breathe in as I go up. Use a bit of sound. And 10 to 15 of those, 10 to 15 of those, Mark, brings you back into your body. Okay, so it brings you out of the head and back into your body. So the moment you come back down into your feet, it helps to create some separation between you and those intrusive thoughts. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'd love to try that one. I've never done that one. The idea of I know that sometimes getting out of bed when you can't sleep in order to disconnect and get back in
Yeah,
again can help. But
yeah.
I mean, I personally use a body scan meditation, which is just trying to bring my attention to parts of my body gradually in turn, and
Mm,
my brain will race
mm,
off, and I'll realize I forgot to think about my knees, and then I'll come back. But because I'm putting my attention in my body, it just quietens the mind. So I find that's my way, and I
yeah,
often can't even get as far as the belly before I've already fallen asleep. So
yeah.
that's my version of that. But thank you, that's really helpful. Nicole, I'm not sure if Nicole's a therapist or has some other kind of client work, but the question is, I have a client who generally feels unsafe, no obvious previous trauma, but has a fear of going to sleep because she says it's the ultimate letting go of control,
Yeah, yeah.
which feels like someone who doesn't feel very safe generally, I would imagine. Have you got any
I would have,
advice
yeah.
for Nicole or indeed anyone else who's trying to help
Mm,
others feel
mm.
safe?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole thing there I'd want to unpack. That I really would want to understand why this person has got a fear of letting go of control, and I'm wondering whether they're a perfectionist. I'm wondering whether some work on that inner perfectionist might be helpful for them to actually calm the inner child. And I mentioned that my inner perfectionist is called Miss Trunchbull. I have several of them, but one of them in particular is called Miss Trunchbull. And when I actually speak to her, I say, look, we've got this. We can do this. We're going to go to bed. We don't have to sleep. All we're going to do is rest. Let's just play with resting. Let's just lie here and think about resting. And the other thing I would do, and I do this with clients who have this fear of going to bed at night, this dread almost, is I get them to practice napping in the afternoon. So you're napping, and a power nap is not sleeping. It's a state of relaxation, anything between 10 to 20 minutes. You do it at some point between 2 and 4 p.m., but you're just allowing yourself to drop down into a state of rest. So it's easier to rest in the afternoon. Than it is to tell yourself, I need to go to bed and sleep at night. So make friends with letting go in the afternoon in a power nap, and that can help with the nighttime experience as well. But it does sound as if that person needs to do some deeper work. And
Mm.
havening might be good for them as well.
Thank you. Next, on to a topic that I know lots in our community are interested in, the menopause. And so Anne said, any tips for menopause and lack of sleep? And Joanna's said that she often wakes with a jolt of fear around 4 p.m., finds it difficult to go back to sleep and feeling very awake, noting that she's perimenopausal. And that this has got worse in recent years. So I'm not sure, if you've got any particular suggestions about that are different,
Yeah.
but clearly a really important phase in life, and also, as I know, it's something that is a huge disruptor for sleep for many people.
Mm. So, with the menopause, it's really important that you're working on regulating your nervous system because this autonomic nervous system can really get out of balance, and it's that the dysregulation with the overstimulated sympathetic nervous system that can cause hot flushes and sudden waking with the jolt. So, this person who's waking, you said 4 p.m., but I imagine that you meant 4 a.m. So, again, don't check the time.
So
You
yes,
might
I
have a
probably read that
yeah,
out wrong. Apologies.
yeah, you probably have a pretty good idea that it was 4 a.m., but stop checking the time when you wake up during the night. I would also make sure that you've got the right clothing, bamboo t-shirts and things like that, just to keep you as cool as possible. So those practical things, the 5 non-negotiables that I mentioned earlier, the breakfast, the minimized caffeine, hydration, get the phone out of the room, earlier to bed 3 or 4 nights a week, really important for menopausal women as well, because it helps to reset the nervous system. I also recommend keep a fan in the bedroom and use here's a lovely little hack. It's something called a forehead stick, and you use them for headaches. So it's a menthol stick, and you can get them from chemists. And when you wake in the early hours, put a little dab of it there. And if you've got the fan sort of oscillating and blowing onto your face, it can cool your brain down, cools the forehead down, which artificially um, it switches on the circadian timer in the brain. So when you drop the temperature in the forehead, it can help to send you to sleep. So you really want
Mm.
that coolness, that differential between the forehead and the rest of the body. And when this is a bit cooler than the rest of the body, it helps you to get to sleep. One more thing about menopause, do the work on the emotional stress. If you're not doing the work on it, whether it's journaling, crying, releasing it, Tiger Balm is a bit, sorry, I just noticed Tiger Balm there, but Tiger Balm is really strong. Don't do that. That will burn your forehead. It's quite strong. So go specifically for, it's called Forehead in the UK. It's a menthol stick that you use for migraines and things like that. But do the work on your emotional stress and trauma. Don't take it to bed with you because that's going to make the hot flushes worse. And look at things like acupuncture, homeopathy, reflexology. That really helps with the menopause.
Thank you, Nerina. It's so important. And I'm glad you mentioned temperature as well, because I've really changed my perception on this. My wife loves to have the window open at night, which when we were first together completely blew my mind because I'd always been wanting to be as warm as possible at night. But gradually over time, I've found that actually being cozy and snug under a blanket or duvet, but having fresh, cool air in the room and a slightly lower temperature in the room has really improved my sleep, and I can see the wisdom in it now. Whereas for years I kind of almost fought against it. I guess everyone's different, but I think there is some science that shows that a slightly cooler temperature at night can help us sleep. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And ideally, your external environment needs to be a little bit around around 18, 19 centigrade. So you walk into your bedroom, you go, oh, it's a bit chilly in here. Then you get into bed and you've got that fresh air in there, and it's a little bit cool, but you've got a warm duvet on you. Or if you get into bed and your feet are too cold, then you have a hot water bottle which you kick out of the bed, which is what I do after 5 minutes. But I've got a cold bedroom, windows open, fan in the bedroom as well. And the dog doesn't like that, and she tries to get under the duvet, but then that's a whole other thing.
Diana's asked a question, I guess parents will be interested in. What can you say to a 12-year-old who periodically has, end of the world sort of terrors in the night and is sort of terrified
Mm,
of going back to sleep?
mm,
Sometimes feeling there's something watching them. I know my daughter at one point had terrible night terrors, and it was really disturbing both for her
yeah,
and for us as well. How can
yeah.
we help our loved ones, especially younger loved ones, feel safe?
Yeah, yeah. I've actually got a couple of my friends who are doing this particular exercise with their kids at the moment. And it really helps with this nighttime worry and anxiety and fear that can pop up, not just for young ones, but for adults as well. So let me just try and do this in 30 seconds. And it's a version of your body scan exercise, Mark. I think I did it in the first sleep session as well that we did last year, but it's such a good exercise. So what you do is you can do this with your little one as well. So imagine you're lying there at night and you might want to say the words out loud, but ideally, what you'd be doing is you'd be whispering, you'd be saying this silently to yourself. But if you're saying it out loud, this is basically what you do. You whisper these words softly, and you start with your one foot or the other, left foot or right. So it goes like this: I love my left foot. I love my left big toe. I love all the toes of my left foot. I love my left ankle. I love my left lower leg. I love my left knee. And this I'm doing, I'm working my way up the body. I'm going very fast. You do it really slowly. You can get really creative. You can go into all the bones in the foot if you like. You can do the calf muscles, the chin, the whatever, the ligaments, everything. But go slowly. And you might get the little one to say it along with you as well. Get them to whisper, I love my toe. I love my left foot. The word love is the most safety inducing word. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says there are only two main emotions. One is love and one is fear. And love is the most safety inducing emotion. The minute you start suggesting this, and when I can get teenagers to do it as well, that's a really powerful thing because often they really hate themselves. But it's a form of self-suggestion which lulls the body into a sense of safety. So you might want to practice it with your little ones in the afternoon. Just lie down, let's have a little bit of fun with this and practice this exercise so that they can also get better at even doing it for themselves during the night as well.
I really love that. We tried something similar with our kids once, which was sort of saying "good night" to my left foot, "good night" to my right foot. But I think the
Yeah.
love is even nicer, as you said. It's
Yes.
very kind of
Yeah.
playful, but also safety-inducing as well.
Yes. Yes.
We're coming towards the end of our time together, Nerina. But I wanted to come back to Bina's question here because it's something you said earlier, but I think is really important, especially to help take some of the pressure off us around sleep. So, would you be willing to reiterate what you said about how it is normal to wake up multiple times? Bina says
Yes.
they found that fascinating. So that feels a bit countercultural, but you're saying that actually we do sleep in sort of little mini cycles and wake up, and we shouldn't be worried by that or upset by that.
Absolutely. So please, please, tonight, don't worry. You will wake up during the night, but you know what? You're not even going to remember most of the times when you wake up because most of the time it's subconscious and it's just a very clever hunter-gatherer instinct to check that the cave is safe. And if we didn't have that sleep elasticity, rebounding between sleep and wakefulness and waking up, if we didn't have that, we would probably be extinct as a species. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about waking up in the early hours. Please don't check the time. Don't get overly fixated on how much sleep you think you're getting or not getting. I mean, it doesn't matter how expensive your wearable devices, it cannot accurately tell you what's going on with your sleep. So if you're getting anxious about it, just ignore the data or don't wear it. It's even normal to sleep with your eyes open, reading a book. So you might be getting more sleep than you think. You could be asleep watching something on TV, Midsummer Murders or something, and actually technically more asleep than awake. So take the pressure off your sleep, start thinking about rest. And before you know it, you'll be getting that amazing rest that you really deserve.
Thank you, Nerina. This has been a fantastic session together. In a moment, I'd love to hand back to you for a kind of final closing thought. But before we do that, let's just do what we call a checkout together, all of us here in this community together today. This has been not just a listening to an expert, although we've really appreciated your expertise. It's been a sort of communal gathering. We've heard from each other in the chat. We've been doing practices together. Just take a moment wherever you are right now to just pause, close your eyes if you feel able to and you can and you're somewhere safe, and just take a nice deep breath and check in with your body. Notice how you're feeling right now. If you're in a time zone where sleep will be coming soon, then maybe you'll be looking forward to that sense of safety that Nerina is helping us cultivate this evening. And if you're in an earlier time zone, then you can perhaps look forward to that later in your day. And just notice the things that you're feeling right now, particularly bring your attention to things that you're grateful for about this time we've spent together, the insights that we've learnt from Dr. Nerina, perhaps some new ideas that you might like to try in your life and with your loved ones. And the final part of the checkout is just to hold that sense of appreciation and all that wisdom, and also to send it out into the world. We're so privileged to be able to be here to learn from Nerina, to have a chance to check in with ourselves. There are many people around the world who need this kind of insight, who need to be nurtured and to feel safer, who are really in dangerous places and struggling. So let's send a bit of warm wishing and love out to others in the world who need it right now too. And let's remember the pledge that we make as members of the Action for Happiness community to create more happiness and less unhappiness in the world. And I think sleep is a foundation for us to be able to do that, both individually and together, Nerina. So thank you for reminding us both about the importance of sleep, but also how we can feel safer in our lives and in our bodies and in our sleep patterns. So back to you for a final thought. What would you like to leave us with as a last sort of message today?
Yeah, an incredible amount of gratitude, Mark, for the opportunity to come and speak to you and your community. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I have to say, in myself, I feel very, very safe and steady right now, which bears testament to your community and you. And I would also say sleep is really important, but fundamentally, sleeping well is about living well. And living well, I believe, is about loving well. So it's simple. From the minute you wake up, live well, make good choices, and that will carry you through the day and you will rest well tonight. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and maybe I'll see you again.
Nerina, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for all your insights. Keep up the great work. And to all of you, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're feeling safe and I hope you sleep well. And thank you for being part of the Action for Happiness community. See you again and see you soon, Nerina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.